And people, do get motivated outside of money. So money is not the only thing, and that is not the implication here. But certainly, if you want to scale out and hire lots of people in that caliber, money will become very important, and you will have to fight it out with the largest companies in the world with the deepest pockets.
Got it. So we come to capital in a bit, but let's say economics wasn't a problem for a second. Do you think, imagine that a startup in India could pay those OpenAI salaries, could compete financially. Do you think just in terms of sheer volume, that talent exists? That's
Absolutely,
up inside.
absolutely, right. So if you closed off our borders, right, or at least dampened immigration in a significant way, and you also did not have as much competition for the best talent from every top MNC in the world, that talent does exist, right? I mean, many people know this, and I pointed this out. The Transformers paper was written by some of the folks from India. There are a lot of Indians in uh, top tier sort of like ranks in Google and OpenAI. My ex colleague from Facebook is the VP of engineering at OpenAI. A lot of my colleagues from Facebook have joined OpenAI actually. And so the talent exists, but it is not a standalone game. It's adversarial sort of a game, right, where you have to compete with other companies.
So then if you can just sort of skip ahead to capital, right? I mean, you mentioned even in your article that you had a relative lack of capital compared to Snowflakes and the Databricks of the world who simply raised a lot more. Why, in a hypothetical world, why couldn't you have raised, if this is 2025, would you still see this as a major disadvantage? I know India has a weak VC ecosystem and it's maybe more nascent and people think a certain way, but even with funds globally free to invest across borders now, do you think it's still a problem in 2025 or is it just a matter of ambition, scale, volume?
So I think we have to distinguish the company I sort of founded and worked for versus sort of a more generic question. So I think Qboard, by the way, was not exact. I mean, I think I asked this in the previous question. What do we even mean by Indian company? Yes, it had a lot of Indian sort of founder DNA and even investor DNA, but it was headquartered in the Valley and did raise from some of the largest companies in the Valley. So I think my broader point there was to point out that the economics of it have to work one way or the other, right? You have to raise lots of money, and raising lots of money cannot just be like a wish. People only give you money if you are like producing lots of revenues, right? So your economic engine has to really fire, right? Which is it has to produce high growth at high revenue for you to be able to raise a lot of money. And you can do one or two rounds. You can sort of like get by and sort of like you don't need to have the entire story come together. But if you're going to raise like hundreds of millions of dollars, then the whole story has to come together. Now, let's separate the two questions of what happened to us versus the challenges that somebody from here might face. I think what happened to us is a very complicated story. So I will not be able to explain it in this call. So I think clearly our economic engine was not as powerful as Snowflake's or Databricks economic engine. There are many reasons for that. There are some takeaways from there that I can pass on. But we simply, could not establish as powerful sort of a economic cycle as our primary competitors. Now, one of the lessons there is that distribution is very important, as all repeat entrepreneurs sort of know from their heart. And our both branding and distribution were not as strong as our competitors. I mean, that's just one of the aspects. There are many other aspects, but that's definitely one of the most important aspects. Now, so let's keep Qboard on the side for a minute. It had its own sort of set of problems. It was in the US now, but let's come to India. I'll just tell you, what I see. I think, as I tried to emphasize in that article, to establish an economic cycle like that, you cannot really think of a company as an Indian company, because your primary markets for establishing something very large have to be the West. If you're gonna build somebody for millions of dollars, you need to be present there. Now, maybe you don't want to build somebody millions of dollars, and maybe you want to do something different, and that changes the discussion. But if you're kind of going to be an OpenAI kind of construct or a Databricks kind of construct, and have people who regularly pay you 100K and sort of in many cases pay you tens of millions of dollars, then you need to be very, very strongly focused and present in those markets. And it is very hard to quantify why exactly. It just sort of comes up for all kinds of reasons. You have an important client you have to meet. You have to be present on the ground, be present as a thought leader, as a founder, as a technologist, make yourself known to the ecosystem at large. A lot of this is relationship selling, right? I mean, people run into people at conferences and sort of they attend a talk and it's okay, well, I'm going to go through a modernization project. You guys are in it. Let's up together. It's a very high value sales means high engagement sales, right? So it's only very hard to quantify that you need to be there for X or Y reason, right? So I think at that point, the notion of an Indian startup sort of loses meaning. I mean, what does it even mean? Anyway, it doesn't mean it's very difficult to define, right? But then capital is global, so you could be present here and still taking capital from like a pension fund in Canada or US. So what does it even mean to be an Indian startup? But let's park that aside. Like still, if you are in India, can you really be in India for that kind of a play? I would question that. Yeah. So now let's shift to let's say you were predominantly sort of founding Indian DNA and we're doing well. So let's cross out the other factors that you were actually able to sort of have a good economic engine, right? So I think the capital scene in India seems to be pretty reasonable. That there's obviously a good amount of capital, but again, I think is it even relevant? Because from my perspective, capital is now a global sort of a phenomenon. The notion of a local capital is interesting to some extent because particularly if you're incorporated in India, I think it limits the vehicles from which you can raise money. But by and large, capital is a global phenomenon.